Message from Starfleet Command, top priority.
You are listening to the TrekRanks Podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 140, featuring the top 5 TNG Underrated. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse. I'm the host of the TrekRanks Podcast, and tonight we have a special show. Tonight we're doing our top 5 TNG Underrated, which is actually a pretty cool landmark topic and landmark episode for us. So I'm going to take you through this really quick here. So 5 years ago, we started a 3-topic, 15-part series looking at Star Trek's 5 legacy series, TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, of course. And we decided we had 3 cool topics, and we were going to do one on all 5 of those shows. So it was our top 5 high concept episodes, top 5 guilty pleasure episodes, and our top 5 underrated. And tonight we are officially starting to wind down this mammoth 15-part series. So tonight is our final underrated show for our legacy series. And in the coming weeks, we're going to have our final high concept topic and then one remaining guilty pleasure show as well. So we're going to knock all those out and get them all done before we get to our epic 150th episode that's coming up soon. That probably is interesting only to me, but I'm not going to lie. It feels pretty good to put that plan in place like 5 years ago. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And now, man, 5 years later, 140 episodes and 15 of them, it's all coming together just like we wrote it up. Okay, tonight, joining us for this great topic, back for her second go-around on TrekRanks, hailing us from the Texas corridor, it's Judge Advocate General Kimberly Lawler. Kimberly, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I know you're a big TNG fan, and then we have another TNG fan on the horn for this episode. We've been trying to get him on for a long time. It is Mr. Christian Juel. You probably just heard him on TrekRanks. We played a voicemail from him on our top 5 scenes in engineering with his top 5 Spock episodes. We've been trying to get him on for a while. Commodore Christian Juel. Christian, welcome, buddy.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad that we can finally make this happen. Thank goodness for summer vacation.
Exactly. Every summer I'm like, oh, I gotta make this happen. And then I usually get busy during the summers and I'm scheduling around it. Anyway, we're finally making it work. I'm super excited. So Christian, for our first time guests, we want to get your Trek origin story, which I don't know what this is. I can't wait to hear exactly how you got into Trek. What's your favorite series? Have you seen it all? Let's hear it. What's your snapshot?
So it's a long and convoluted story, but when I was in middle school, my best friend growing up was a big TNG fan. TNG was actually on in production at the time. And kind of like we always did, we always kind of got each other into everything we liked. And I just picked it up one day and started watching it. My first episode was Time's Arrow Part 1. I remember that distinctly. And TNG has always kind of been that comfort Trek for me. And then Deep Space Nine was my first series I watched live. And I watched Voyager throughout. And then with Enterprise, that's when I moved out of my childhood home and kind of lost touch with it in a sense because I had no TV at the time. I kept up with Trek though, because Trek was my safe space. Yeah. I was bullied very badly in high school, especially. And Star Trek was this place where it didn't matter that you were different. It didn't matter because your differences were what made you a strong team. So Trek was always, and it still is, my safe space.
I love that.
So favorite series is it's probably going to be TNG still.
Today, yeah, especially today.
But I do love it all. I mean, I've seen everything with the exception of the animated series, but I'm on a rewatch of the original series and I plan to watch animated series when I get to the end of that.
That's awesome. That's a great story. It's everybody's safe space. That's one of the great things about Trek and part of its legacy for sure. Okay, let's get into our TrekRanks recalibration and get into this show.
What are you recalibrating?
Everything. It's a sweeping, a recalibration of all systems.
As regular listeners will know by now, general order number one of the TrekRanks Charter is that we love Trek. We love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics. And remember, it's not about the ranks. That's just our excuse to talk about Star Trek because, as Mr. Spock himself has said, our show is all about
infinite diversity in infinite combinations, symbolizing the elements that create truth and beauty.
No wrong answer. It's not about being right or definitive in any way. It's just about sharing the things we love about Trek. And we love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise, the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery, Short Treks, Picard, Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds, and Prodigy. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks is current through 851 episodes of Star Trek, which currently translates to the 8th episode of Season 1 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the Elysian Kingdom. And one final reminder that we use episodes as a shorthand term, but the 13 films, I guess actually 4 TNG films, are in play tonight as well.
I've boosted power to the communications bandwidth.
We appreciate that, Mr. Kim, and you can contact TrekRanks on Subspace at TrekRanks.com, and you can find me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra, and you can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527, or you could just record your own picks and send me a link. We can do it that way. Okay, to wrap it up, Kimberly and Christian, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you on Subspace. Kimberly.
You can usually find me easiest on Twitter. I'm at KallieND3, so KALLIEND3.
Love it. And Christian, how about you on Twitter?
So my Twitter is at TrekkieCJ.
TrekkieCJ, love it. 2 great Trekkie follows. All right, let's get into our Level One Diagnostic to get into the show.
Run a Level One Diagnostic series. Come.
So for the underrated shows, for anyone going all the way back to our previous topics with TOS, Enterprise, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, we do this show with our patented TrekRanks Matrix, which is one we use for our season recap shows as well. So instead of just picking 5 episodes or moments, we break it down really quick. Round 5, we do like a production design, element, prop, costume, writing, whatever. Round 4, we do our underrated performer or creative, someone who's not getting enough credit. Could be a regular character, could just be a one-time character or something, actor or performer. Round 3 is the Dabo round, complete wildcard round. Pick anything you want to highlight as underrated at TNG. Round 2 is our underrated character. Again, could be a regular or could be just a one-time appearance. And round 1 is clear. It's what we do on TrekRanks. It's your most underrated TNG episode ever. And then we'll rattle off some secondary systems to hear some outline picks. So this is going to be awesome. Let's get into our prime directives and figure out how everyone narrowed down their list.
But what you're proposing is exactly the kind of tampering the prime directive prohibits.
Okay, Kimberly, going to start with you. How did you break it down and come up with your list of 5 TNG underrated topics?
So obviously some of this is subjective. So for the underrated episode, I tried to pick something that was really from the bottom half of the TrekRanks rankings. And I know we would disagree on our placement on some things, but I thought that was probably a general thing. So, and then when I picked underrated elements, I tried to pick an underrated episode to illustrate that point. And that didn't always happen because sometimes I thought I had to break my own prime directives sometimes because there were a few underrated elements and otherwise celebrated shows or episodes, but that was my general guiding
I love
principle.
it. You're in good company if you're breaking the prime directive. So it's kind of what happens on Star Trek. And yeah, I always say this too when we do the underrated. We know it's all great. Like it's like when we do the guilty pleasures. To somebody's underrated is the greatest thing ever and the one they think about the most. So it's just another way to talk about Star Trek. So Christian, how about you, man? How did you tackle this first TrekRanks topic?
So I originally went into this thinking I was going to select only from season 1 and season 2, just because those are the more underrated seasons.
I like that.
But then I really wanted to open up to the entire series because I wanted to talk about things from other seasons. And my choices, I kind of went with things that either were kind of snarked at some or things that weren't talked about quite as much as other things. So that's how I kind of picture it as underrated.
Snarked at is good. That's kind of how I look at underrated. Like if people are making fun of it or ignoring it. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, so for mine, I actually got kind of deep into my Prime Directive. I've challenged myself really to find some deep cuts. So that was the first thing. If it wasn't like a super deep cut, I tried to move on from it. And then because I've done so many of these episodes, I also tried to challenge myself by making sure I did not pick any of my guilty pleasure TNG episodes. And we did a sneaky good episodes once where I had a couple of TNG on there. So I said, I got to keep those out. So I tried for the most part to pick only TNG episodes that I haven't really talked about on TrekRanks that much. Some of them I broke my Prime Directive on, but generally speaking, that's where I was looking at it, and it helped me kind of narrow things down. So I'm definitely going to be highlighting some new areas that we haven't really targeted on the show before. So I'm excited about that. Okay, let's do this first Cadecaton. Introduce us to the new order of things.
It'll be alphas like us that determine the future of this quadrant. That will be the new order of things.
Thank you, First Cadecaton. As always, a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, everyone will reveal their 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease their pick. Then we'll each name our TNG underrated choice and the specific reasons we're highlighting it. And of course, we'll associate it with one episode for that pick. And at the end, everyone will rattle off a few secondary systems selections for the picks that just missed our list. And as always, if we have any duplicate picks, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. Okay, Kimberly, we're going to start with you. What's your number 5 pick for your top 5 TNG underrated?
My 5 words for this pick are handy device that does everything, hashtag tech the tech. And the pick is tricorders.
Oh, excellent. I like tech the tech.
Yes. When the episode that I picked to illustrate this is season 4, episode 9, Final Mission. You look at the original series tricorders, and they're very cool, and they can do lots of things, but they're obviously much more bulky. And so the redesign for next gen is just how I think of them, how I think of tricorders. That's what they are. That's what they look like. And I think it's a really cool design. I looked up, so it was redone by Rick Sternbach.
Oh, it was? It's a Rick Sternbach design? That's awesome.
Yeah. And it just seemed very cool and functional. And what's funny to me is that they can do pretty much anything. So I had one example was from The Chase, where you put together the genetic puzzle, like to solve the origins of life in the universe. And then they land on the planet, and Crusher's like, I think it's modifying my tricorder. And that's going to be how we get the presentation of not the founder. Right. There's an example in Timescape when Data's tricorder, he said, I think I can use it to make delta band emissions to do a temporal aperture. And we're like, great, that's great. Use the tricorder to create time pockets.
Of course it could do that.
Just a little reconfiguring. And then I picked Final Mission because that is a more underrated episode, but I've always been very partial to it. It's so striking on the location, the lighting, the music in that episode. And Wesley uses his tricorder not only to find the water, but when alien Sentry is kind of rushing around and encasing everybody in weird plastic stuff at the very end, he's able to just reconfigure his tricorder to somehow get past that Sentry and get the water and save Picard. And it's a very dramatic scene. So that's way to save.
Way to save Picard. I love how good is Will Wheaton's tricorder acting in Final Mission. Or he's
it's
just
really
like,
good.
He's like tapping
acting.
him. It looks like he's really, really making a difference on that tricorder. Oh my God, I love this pick.
I think I'm onto something. I've analyzed the Sentry's energy patterns.
Wesley, I may not make it.
I've taken the transponder element from my communicator, and I've used it to modify my tricorder. I think I can use it to interrupt the Sentry's electrical pattern. Stop it. Maybe slow it down.
Listen to me.
Yes, sir.
I love the angle of the tricorder can literally do anything, and it really can. It's an awesome design. Rick Sternbach's a legend. And it's just, one of the best things about tricorders is that midway through the TNG run, Playmates had really good quality tricorder prop toys on the market that I think anybody of a certain age owned and still does own, including myself. I love this pick. Christian, what's your take on tricorders?
I mean, who doesn't love a tricorder?
I know.
So much of the technology we use on our phones today, we basically have little tricorders we carry with us everywhere and do tricorder things on. And since TNG was my series, I love the design, especially the medical one.
Yes, with the little device that you can pull out. Yeah.
It's so good. It's funny to say that about who doesn't love them. I was literally just a few hours ago I'm catching up on all the Asians on Star Trek podcast, and the host, Phil Yu, was talking about, it was a guest, was talking about his son playing with his old Playmates tricorder, and was like, this is all it does. My iPhone's like 10 times better than this. like, no, kid, you don't know. They basically were lamenting that the kid just couldn't appreciate it. Anyway, I love that pick. Awesome. Final Mission's a super underrated episode. Fantastic. Christian, how about you? What's your production design underrated element for round 5?
So 5 words, spacier look than the successor, and hashtag Riker's best look. My production design element are the seasons 1 and 2 uniforms.
Okay, with the pinstripes. I love it.
The pinstripes, the one piece suits.
Yes, one piece suit.
So for my 5 words, I said spacier look than the successor. I do think that they have more of a science fiction quality to them than what we get in season 3 and beyond.
Yeah.
And I love the sheen it has on them. They almost have like a glittery sheen in the light to them.
Yeah.
And I did say Riker's best look because I think that Riker looked the best in season 2. I'm not going to fan too much on him, but
please feel free.
For episode, I chose The Child, so season 2, episode 1.
Yep.
Because that's the first time we see him with a beard and that uniform. I don't know. I love especially the collar area. The collar area has like a cleaner design to it, I think.
Yeah, I love this pick. There's something about those uniforms that always kind of made me wonder, like, why did they think they needed to change them? Because I love them. I kind of prefer the little pinstripe on the shoulders. I definitely prefer the buckles on the end of the pant leg, just the kind of the way that's angled and it has a little pinstripe too. I guess the one piece was probably maybe the main reason they got rid of them. They are more space uniform-esque in that regard. But I like that you chose season 2 Riker, so you get the old style uniform and the beard. So really, that's on point. Kimberly, what's your take on the old school TNG uniforms?
This is definitely underappreciated. I have to say, I really like the collar uniforms better. But Riker with the beard and the original uniform is pretty good combination. And yeah, they do look a little bit futury. It was a neat redesign of the uniforms. That is a good pick.
And I'm pretty sure the original ones, Bob Blackman was, when he joined, the legendary costume guru for Trek. I think he's the one that redesigned them in season 3. And I think the first ones were done by William Ware Thies, the legend from TOS. So I have to check some of that, but I think my timeline's right on that. Okay. I love those first 2 picks. I love my pick as well. I get a little bit of a different angle on this one. I like this pick because it's a well-known element of TNG that I don't think really clicks with people as being a big part of TNG, and I think it's underrated. So my production design element is 5 words and a hashtag. Serialized Trek's true starting point, hashtag. Way back in 1990, And it's the serialized storytelling element of the production of Star Trek TNG. And I think, obviously, we know Deep Space Nine, that's where the legend of serialized Trek came into play and really helped launch really a new era of television. But I think what happens in early TNG, it's really, for me, what put Trek over the top in terms of being such a landmark series, TNG, and just kind of launching the way for Trek to never stop. And it's what made me kind of go. I've always been a Trekkie since the 70s, 80s, but it was in the 90s watching TNG in like season 3 where I was just like, holy crap, they're making all this connect. This is amazing, this world building. So my episode is Sins of the Father, which is obviously not an underrated episode. But I chose it because, for me, that was the starting point of this Worf Klingon discommendation arc that really started. They started layering that into episodes like Sins of the Father, then Reunion, The Mind's Eye, Redemption 2, which are 2 of my favorite episodes. And all of this Worf Klingon world building, the way it's connected from one episode to the next, and the emissary, I should include that too, because Kalar, of course, being debuted in that episode and then dying, and Sayla, I can mention her too, Sela, because from yesterday's Enterprise, and she ends up in the Mind's Eye Redemption. Just all this world building blew my mind at that time in television. Just wasn't happening. And so I just think it's an underrated element that TNG had a lot of cool serialized elements that helped push Star Trek into this new era. So that is my pick. Kimberly, what's your take on that?
I love this pick. And yes, I think TNG does this so perfectly well, having a mix of the standalone episodes, but you can see the character development over time and the story elements just being built upon. And as soon as you said that, my first thought was the Klingon, the arc that did start so early on, and it's perfect. So I love that pick.
Yeah, for sure. That's really the one that launched it. Christian, what's your take?
So I just finished season 4 last night on my rewatch. I'm doing a full rewatch of TNG 2, this time on Blu-ray only. And
I love that.
Well, Blu-ray, so I can watch all the extras too.
Of course, yeah.
But I've never understood this kind of question in the air that TNG wasn't serialized. I mean,
yeah, like they kind of eliminated that narrative, right? The narrative, it's just like, no, it is serialized.
Absolutely.
Especially with characters like Wesley Crusher. I mean, his character development had so much serialization.
Yeah. Yeah, good point with Wesley, for sure. Yeah, that's kind of the whole point of the pick, because it doesn't get talked about enough. It's an underrated element of TNG. It was serialized.
Right. DS9 is awesome, but it didn't invent continuing storylines.
They for sure took it to the next level, and they did things that had never. And of course, they deserve all the credit. And it's it's my favorite series, but the fact that TNG has so much of it, I just think gets forgotten. So, okay, awesome. Round 5. That's why we break it up into these topics. That's a great way to look at it. Round 4 is all about our performer or creative. Let's hear it. Kimberly, who's your number 4 pick?
So my pick for this round is Renee Echeverria. The 5 words are, I think, therefore I am, #computer end program. And for this one, the episode I picked is season 6, episode 11, Ship in a Bottle.
Wow.
I think that for the people that I think of as the core 4 writers on TNG, so Brandon Braga, Ron Moore, Naren Shankar, and then Renee Echeverria, I think the first 3 really get a little bit more credit, and they're more widely recognized, partly for what they did on TNG, but also for what they went on to do with like Battlestar Galactica and CSI and 24, things like that. So Renee Echeverria doesn't get talked about very much, but I think he was a really important part of the writer's room. And he wrote his very first episode was The Offspring, which is a pretty incredible one to get hired based off of.
He was a big part of the script submission thing that TNG did. He's one of the first big finds, as Ronald D. Moore was too. But Yeah, he wrote The Offspring. Say no more.
Right. And I, Borg, which is one of my favorite episodes.
Oh my God, he wrote that too. Yeah.
He also did True Q. And then when I was looking, he had the story or the writing credit for Lower Decks and Face of the Enemy and Second Chances. And so I just thought he should be highlighted a little bit more than maybe he is. But the episode that I picked to highlight that was Ship in a Bottle, which is a bottle episode, but it's so great. And there's a little bit of the continuity we were talking about to pull up Moriarty from a few seasons earlier and do a great episode that has you questioning the reality a little bit with Data having to use clues to figure out that they were still on the holodeck, but then they were able to flip that around and trick Moriarty the same way.
I love it. And this is why we do this topic. Renee Echeverria is like, everyone kind of mostly knows the name, people who are kind of into Trek, but he definitely is underrated in comparison to the other names and some of the ways that they're remembered and rattled off. And of course, he also went on and was part of DS9 staff forever. He's a huge part of the development and the scripts for Deep Space Nine. So Renee Echeverria is an absolute Trek writing legend that does not get enough credit. Christian, any take on Renee Echeverria?
What can I say? Every episode that Kim listed off as having been written by Renee are all episodes that I love. So I can't say anything more about him than that.
That's perfect. And I know he wrote either part 1 or 2 of my favorite Deep Space Nine episodes, past tense. So he's an absolute legend for sure. Love that pick. And Ship in a Bottle is most certainly not an underrated episode. Love it. Okay. That's you breaking your prime directive. Well done, Kimberly. Christian, who is your underrated creative or performer?
So creative or performer, 5 words and a hashtag. People love or hate her. And hashtag little one. My actor I chose was Majel Barrett Roddenberry.
Oh my God.
Growing up, I was very young when I started watching this, probably 11, 12. I loved the character of Lwaxana, and everyone I knew at that time would groan about her. And it seems like as an adult, being on Trek Twitter, people still love to groan about Lwaxana. I never got the hate behind Lwaxana.
I don't either.
It's incomprehensible.
We see such a range of performance and such a range of emotion from the first time we see her in Haven to the last Next Gen episode, which was the one that I chose as my highlight. So season 7's Dark Page, just her range of emotions. And I think losing Jean, we see a shift in Michel's performance. We see her really delving into these depths that we had not seen with her acting before. And, just the last 3 episodes she did. So Half a Life, Cost of Living, and then Dark Page were just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's such a good pick. I like the way you frame range of her performances. She really did it all, from farce to romance to just pure sadness and sorrow. Dark Page, I'm pretty sure Haven, her debut was one of my guilty pleasure episodes. And so was Dark Page. 2 of my 5 guilty pleasure episodes are Lwaxana episodes. And I love Dark Page. I think it's massively underrated. I probably would have picked it somewhere here if I hadn't already picked it. And I'll just add this because this literally happened to me like 2 days ago. I was watching Manhunt again, and she has that great scene where she's talking to herself. She's talking to the computer in the corridor. And every time, and by the way, I say every time, but it took me 15, 20 years before I put it together. Wait, she's talking to herself in this corridor. And now when I see it, it just fills me with joy that she's got that. There's that scene exists in Trek where she's talking to the ship's computer.
Hello, computer? Is Commander Riker still on the bridge?
Negative. Riker is currently in holodeck 3.
holodeck? Where is that?
Follow the comm panel lights. They will lead you there.
Oh.
Awesome. I love this pick. Kimberly, what's your take on Majel Barrett Roddenberry?
It's a wonderful pick. And Dark Page is a really powerful episode. And I think as kid, it's a good episode and I knew it. As a parent, it's one I almost can't watch anymore, but just the love and compassion between Deanna and Loaxana in that episode is incredibly moving. And so whether or not the special effects are, not that great for chasing around through the corridors of the ship with the wolf and everything, it's a great character building episode for both of them and really powerful.
Yeah, I can't even imagine for you. As an old man with no kids, it tears me and destroys me every time. So I can't even imagine a parent watching how to get through that. So appreciate that. Okay. It's my pick. Round 4. Oh, I love this one too. To be fair, this is not really an underrated performance, or it's actually a super popular episode, super popular character. But it's iconic. It's quoted all the time. People love this episode, this performer, but nobody knows this actor's name. And so I am listing him as underrated. 5 words and a hashtag. Born on Gaspar 7, hashtag, but you wouldn't know it by looking at him. And it is the actor David Spielberg, who plays Cal Hutchinson. Good old Call Me Hutchinson from Starship Mine, TNG Season 6.
You must be Will Riker.
I must be.
Calvin Hutchinson. Call me Hutch. Calvin, awful name. I've never forgiven my parents. Soon as I saw you, I knew you had to be the Enterprise's first officer.
Oh?
Of course. Your reputation precedes you. Flashing blue eyes, square jaw, quite the ladies' man, I hear. Now, don't be modest, Will.
It's just a classic performance. Everybody loves it, but I just feel like this actor is underrated because nobody knows who David Spielberg is. He's Hutch, man, and he worked for 40 years consistently from 1968 to 2007. Literally almost has at least one credit almost every year. Ironside, Rockford Files. He was in The Barbary Coast with William Shatner. It's on Mork and Mindy, Family Ties, ER, The West Wing, all those shows. Everybody loves Hutch, but everyone should know David Spielberg's name as well. He passed at age 77 about 6 years ago in 2016. So I love the guy and just want to highlight him. And also the mating habits of the Arcarian hornfowl are quite interesting. Okay, Kimberly, what's your take on Hutch?
That is one of my favorite episodes, and he is underappreciated because I admit I did not know his name, and I had no idea he was that great of a character actor and working actor. That's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes you recognize him from other roles. I don't even recognize him from anything else. So I looked him up like, wait, this guy has been in everything for 40 years, and not only do I not really remember anything, I don't really know his name, and he's obviously renowned in terms of his credits.
He's so funny with the small talk. And I just love how everybody is, pretending to get along, which they should be a little more gracious about that. But then when he gets pawned off on Data, the two of them interacting is brilliant. And I can watch that anytime.
Yeah, they should definitely be a little more gracious to Hutch. And there is the sad, I kind of try to, we know he got killed in the episode, but technically we don't. There's always a chance he survived. We just saw him get shot. We don't know for sure.
I like to hope that.
But I think for all intents and purposes, R.I.P. Hutch. We love you. Christian, what's your take on David Spielberg as Hutch?
That was such a memorable scene. You watch that episode, and then as the scene comes up, you're like, oh yeah, this scene. And you're enraptured by it because not only his performance, but Brent's performance as well, playing off of him. And there's just something special about 80s and 90s Trek where the little one-time characters, you look at the history of their work, and they're in basically everything. You're like, oh yeah, it's that man or it's that person. I mean, they're in everything.
Yep, there is a lot of it, and it's like that, like with like Murder She Wrote. It's the same kind of thing. By the way, he was in an episode of Murder She Wrote. Okay, soup round. Let's do this. Round 3. No, sorry, it's the Dabo round. Let's do this. Kimberly, what's your Dabo round pick?
My 5 words are Betazoid women full of surprises. And the hashtag is like mother, like daughter. And my pick for this round is Lwaxana and Deanna Troi.
Oh, perfect. That's fantastic. That's perfect for the wild card round.
I'm switching my episode on the fly because I was going to pick Dark Page, but the episode I'm going to pick is season 3's Menage a Troi.
Yes.
I don't think, kind of similar to what Christian said on not knowing he wasn't supposed to like Lwaxana. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to like this episode until I was an adult and went online and realized that lots of people just could not even believe something like this got made. I always loved it as a kid, one, because it had Riker and Troy's relationship. And so I was very excited to see like that, that little moment at the beginning. I think Lwaxana is so funny, showing up to interrupt their picnic with Mr. Hom. I know the Ferengi are, not good villains, but they're amusing. And Riker escaping by playing chess and sending that secret signal to Wesley. And then plus the last scene with Lwaxana performing and getting Picard to quote Shakespeare to her is awesome. So I can go on and on about Lwaxana and Deanna being underused and underappreciated in the show overall, but I'm glad that they had that relationship as part of the show over all 7 years, and that we got to know those characters to the extent that we did, because they had a lot more depth than they're given credit for, but a lot of humor too.
I mean, I'm so glad you picked Menage a Troi and just changed to Menage a Troi. You made a great.
Is that a first time for Trek?
I mean, no, I think actually, yeah, I picked it for top 5 Crusher episodes because
it was Wesley, not Beverly.
Yeah, because we did Crusher episodes. You could pick Wesley or Beverly,
right? And
I picked it for Wesley because I really like him solving that mystery at the end. Oh, and I'm looking here. Thad took it in his guilty pleasures for Thad Haight chose it for his guilty pleasures. But listen, your defense of it is really good because you forget that scene at the end with Picard defending Lwaxana is just absolute gold. And all the maybe problematic parts of the way the lecherous Ferengis are behaving, you can almost forgive it just for that scene with Picard. And I'm just going to say, isn't it amazing how there was this time when you didn't know you were supposed to hate something, and then you figure out later that with the internet, it's like, oh shit, everybody hates that thing that I love. So that was an amazing time. I don't know, I guess that doesn't really exist anymore. Now we just know instantaneously. Christian, what is your take on Menage a Troi and Lwaxana and Deanna? I love this pick.
Well, I love the relationship between Lwaxana and Deanna. Hearing Marina talk about her relationship with, especially Majel, she was very close to both Majel and Jean, but I mean, she was alone in this country when she started filming here, and Majel kind of took her in and became a maternal figure for her. And even yet, she says that as season 1 was kind of pushing through, Majel said that one person was going to be let go, and she was possibly on that list. And she really helped her to kind of step up her game in a sense. So there really was a mother-daughter bond in real life. And then we see it on the show too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It adds an amazing element to it, how close they were.
As much as I love
behind the scenes,
Anna, I also love the character Deanna. When I was a kid, my favorite character was Deanna Troi.
Right, which is just amazing. I love that.
Me
love
too.
it. So cool. Okay, fantastic. Dabo round pick. Christian, what is your wild card pick?
All right, Dabo. 5 words. More than a convention center. Hashtag beige for days. My
yes.
Dabo round
Nice.
Enterprise D interior.
I love it.
So poor Enterprise D always gets called, convention center, always gets called,
Hilton lobby. Yeah.
But to me, growing up, as I said, it was my safe space. And the Enterprise always felt like a real place to me, especially as season 3 started and we got the better lighting in. And it's still, when I go back and watch episodes now, it still feels like I'm in a real place. And it still feels like a place I can go to and that I'm safe and I want to be there. And as much as I'm enjoying and loving Strange New Worlds, and as much as I want to live in one of those cabins on the old Enterprise, there's just something special about the Enterprise D to me. The episode I picked was Cost of Living, just to pick an episode that kind of was a bottle episode and took place on the ship, and we saw many different rooms of the ship.
I love this pick so much. I feel the exact same way, how comfortable it is. It feels real. You want to be there. And it is just beige, and it is just like carpet on the walls, and all these things that kind of people criticize about it, I guess, are true, but it's not a negative to me. I love it. I love it. Safe space, just comfort space. That's how it feels. I did think about a pick in this area. I didn't go there, but I love your hashtag beige for days. That's going to be my new catchphrase. Fantastic. Kimberly, what is your take on the beige, beautiful, mundane, but comfortable interior of the Enterprise D?
I love it too. I definitely thought about picking this in the context of, everything else that we look at seems so much more modern, right? You've got neutral grays on Voyager, which I love, and you've got your Apple Store Kelvin bridge for the Enterprise, which is bright white and stuff. And a lot of those, and then the Enterprise feels more like a submarine in a certain way for the NX-01. I get it, but I know that the beige can be criticized as being that hotel, but it feels warm, and so that's my ship. That I agree. That's where I feel comfortable. It feels like people live there. It doesn't feel utilitarian. It feels like a place you could be and it would feel comfortable. So I still like it.
Yeah, and it's a legitimate pick because it is underrated the way a lot of people talk about it. So fantastic. All right, I love your guys' picks. Now my pick is kind of dorky, and it's it's perfect for the Dabo round because it's just one of these things in Trek that have stuck with me for 25 years. I just thought they were super cool when this episode aired, and they never really went back to it. And for some reason, I just think they're cool. And I love this as a science concept. So 5 words and a hashtag: surfing space on a wave, hashtag subspace cowabunga. And it is just the soliton waves from the episode New Ground in season 5. And I actually think New Ground's kind of an underrated episode. It's the one where Alexander joins Worf on the Enterprise for the first time, and you've got those cute Korvan Gilvos, endangered species. But I love this episode being built around the danger of the week is this concept of the soliton waves, which is just, I have no idea why this is stuck with me, but just this pushing a ship into warp with a wave with a bunch of field coils on a planet that just pushes it into space. And then there's another, a scattering field on another planet that dissipates the wave and takes it out. And of course, everything goes wrong. And I just love this concept. Maybe it's because I grew up on an island and I'm always around the beach and I love waves and surfing. So anyway, there you go. It's soliton waves. It's pretty pedestrian a pick if you're ever going to get. They did refer to them one more time in D Space Nine's Destiny when they were trying to create the communications link relay between the Gamma Quadrant and the wormhole, and the Cardassian scientists were going to shoot soliton waves through to help kind of stabilize it. Anyway, Soliton Waves. Christian, what's your take on this pick?
I actually don't remember.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Like I said, I just finished my season 4 rewatch. So
then you got this to look forward to coming up in like 10 episodes.
But I mean, hey, it's geeky, it's good. So
say no more. Kimberly, Soliton Waves.
I think you're successful in finding a really deep cut, and partly because the episode is not really a super memorable one to me otherwise, but it is a great sci-fi concept, and it's fun. And Data and Geordi at the beginning being a little bit like very Data and Geordi like about being excited about a new sci-fi or a new scientific idea. And Data being his usual self also is a very funny moment.
That's I should have mentioned that. That's a great part of it where Geordi's like super excited by this and Data's just processing. So okay, that might be the most blasé pick in the history of Trek Ranks. All those things to choose from, Moorhouse, you chose Soliton Waves. All right, here we go. Round 2. Character. Kimberly, what's your round 2 pick?
This will not be a surprise to people that know me online, but my underrated character is Beverly Crusher. My 5 words are commander, doctor, director, and mom. #dancing doctor. And the episode that I picked to illustrate why I think she's such an awesome, underrated character is Iborg.
Oh, fantastic. Was your # dancing mom, did you say?
Dancing doctor.
Okay, sorry. I misheard it. I love this pick. Beverly Crusher, totally underrated.
She was my favorite character from the very beginning. This is another one. You go online, you find out like people think that she's bland and not that good of a character, and certainly not as good as all the other, doctors that are out there. And I just completely disagreed with that. I think she's got a lot of depth to her. Like she has, she fills these roles. Like I said, she's a commander. She took the command test just to stretch her skills. And she's obviously good at being in charge of things and taking command and making decisions. She's a doctor. She's a good doctor. She headed Starfleet Medical at one point. But she also has hobbies and interests that she does outside of her professional life, and by writing and directing plays and engaging with people on the ship for that reason, or in that capacity. So we get to see that a lot in things like Frame of Mind, Fistful of Datas. And then she's also a single mother and does a pretty good job overall raising Wesley. I love how she is in Journey's End when she's perplexed by him because he's always been successful and they had the hiccup with the first duty, but she just wants what's best for him and being loving and affirming to him for that and saying, I don't know what's going on, but I support you. And that's the way that she always is. And so in addition, in her personality, she is very self-confident. She is not afraid to stand up for what she believes. And I think that Iborg shows this the most. Like the episode, we remember it mostly for Hugh, for Geordi becoming friends with Hugh, for Guinan and Picard changing their views towards the Borg. But the whole thing is set in motion by Beverly because she's the one that wants to rescue him. Yep. And nobody else agrees with her. And she has compassion and determination and just argues for it and says, this is a dying, person. I need to do what I can to save him. And so she gets to bring him up to the ship. And then when they talk about using Hugh to send the virus back to the Borg and wipe them out, she's the one in the conference room that calls them out and said, you're talking about destroying an entire race. And they're like, yeah, pretty much we are. And she said, okay, I just want to be clear that you're talking about genocide. And that kind of shakes everybody up and makes them realize, okay, I guess we should step back a little bit and think about what we're doing and whether it's ethical or not. So I give her a lot of credit for helping set that in motion and doing the moral and ethical thing in that. And we remember it as one of the best episodes. And then that set in line a whole other arc going forward with Descent and then later in Star Trek Picard.
I mean, perfect character, perfect pick. She's so underrated. There's so many comments I want to make, but the proof of how underrated she is that she's never included in any of the merchandising, right? If anything they're doing TNG merchandising and they don't have room for 7, she's the one they cut off. I mean, literally, you look at anything, the Pez dispensers, any kind of toy or anything, it's like, oh, they have 6, no Beverly. I mean, it's always Beverly getting cut off. The fact that she's the one who never came back. She was never in any Trek until Prodigy finally brought us back a Beverly Crusher episode with Kobayashi Maru. I'll add that Gates McFadden, it just is such an obviously awesome person inhabiting that role. You can see it all. I love the way you broke down the way Beverly's a mom and the way she has hobbies and it can separate kind of her personal life from the work and still does it. It's just unbelievable character. I love it. Totally underappreciated and underrated. Fantastic pick. And we're going to see more of her at Picard season 3. Can't wait. And
I can't wait.
Christian, what's your take?
So 2 words that Kim said, moral and ethical. And it seems like those 2 words really encompass Beverly Crusher as a doctor, because we see her in so many episodes and it's always about the moral or the ethics of what they're doing. And she's an amazing doctor and she doesn't get the credit for that.
Yeah.
And she's a character who's always really stuck with me, maybe because growing up with in a single family home myself, maybe I kind of saw her as a mother figure in my own way, but I've always loved the character of Beverly, and Gates is an amazing human being.
Yeah, I probably would have picked the high ground somewhere in my list too, but I picked that for one of my guilty pleasure episodes. So, because I love her in that. She's just perfect. Like immediately, like, nope, I'm doing this.
One of my favorite TNG episodes is Suspicions, which that's another episode that people love to throw out. But I love that episode, and Beverly is amazing in it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, fantastic start for round 2. Characters. Christian, who's your character?
So 5 words in hashtag. From the shadows and back. Hashtag unfinished storyline. And my character is Sayla.
Fantastic.
So we had 2. Well, she was in basically 3 storylines. There was the Mind's Eye that we see her only in shadows, and then Redemption Part 2 we see her just a little bit, and then we see her more in Part 2, and then Unification, of course.
Yeah.
This character, they built her up to be this supervillain. You know, we've kind of heard about supervillains in Star Trek before, and they've always tried to give one to Picard. Why not Sayla? She would have been a perfect supervillain for him, because she would probably blame Picard for everything that happened in her life, even though she only exists because of him, allowing Tasha to go back in time. But to me, in my head frame, Sayla would have been a perfect character to have masterminded everything in Nemesis.
I love it. Hashtag bring back Sayla.
Yes, so much anger. We really see that kind of in the second part of Redemption. And that anger they really should have used to kind of build up that character. But
yeah, I mean, it's funny. I feel like I actually love that we got a second Sayla story with Unification, because I thought after Redemption, I thought, well, we might not see her again, but she's still out there. I mean, she would fit so many. I mean, who knows? Maybe. I mean, again, Redemption is my favorite TNG episodes. I love Unification. Kimberly, what's your take on Sayla?
That's a good pick. I never really loved Tasha Yar, and so I'm so glad that they created the character of Sayla so that Denise Crosby could come back more than once and do such a great job with creating a villain. And I like her best in Unification, because getting to interact with Spock and Data and be snarky to them, but they still get the upper hand, of course.
Yeah.
So no, that's a great pick.
Which episode did you pick, Christian?
Oh, sorry. I picked Redemption 2 because that's when we get a little more of her backstory.
Yeah, that's my all-time favorite. I love it. And also, there's just been all this Romulan content in Picard and in some of this new Trek that it's just kind of sitting out there. You never know. Could happen. Okay, fantastic. So I am going major deep cut on mine. 5 words in the hashtag. Hierarchical collective command structure? Interrogative. Hashtag exploring the galaxy. And my pick is just this Cytherian explorer in the nth degree, this big floating holographic head. And at the end of nth degree is my underrated character. I love this dude. He's only got about 5 or 6 lines. I like the Cytherians a lot. I love the concept of a species out there that's exploring, but they're doing it by sending probes and bringing people to them to get a better understanding of the galaxy and what's out there and have exchanges. I've always loved that idea. I would love to see the Cytherians some more. Again, it's just a big floating holographic head on the bridge. It's a really cool effect. The actor who played it was also the guy who played the Syrah. His name's Kay Cutter. He played Syrah in The Storyteller in Deep Space Nine, which kind of, once you hear that, it's like, oh, of course, they're the same. But I just love the way this guy talks. Emotive, electrical chemical stimulus response.
Emotive, electrochemical stimulus response. Cranial plate, bipedal locomotion, endoskeletal, contiguous external integument.
I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise.
Hierarchical collective command structure.
Who are you?
Interrogative.
Anyway, I picked the Cytherians, another super major deep cut. Anybody, Christian, you have a take on the nth degree and the Cytherian?
That is a deep cut. Yeah, it's funny. Growing up, Barclay episodes were not my favorite. Maybe because the first one is so awkward, but
it is.
But the nth degree is my favorite Barclay episode, and you get the Argus array, which is beautiful, and I want to see more of that.
Yeah.
But it is such an interesting take on what is possibly out there. What kind of interactions could we have with other species? Because they might not all interact the same way we do.
Yeah, I think the nth degrees, it might be, it's probably my favorite Barclay TNG episode, even more than Ship in a Bottle. I really like, actually I'll have to check TrekRanks and see which one's actually my favorite. But I really like the sci-fi element, the Flowers for Algernon element of Barclay getting this major intelligence, but never really being a threat to anybody. I always appreciated that element, because usually in that storyline they make it, he's going to treat people bad, but he never does. So love the Cytherians. And Kimberly, what's your take on them?
I've got to hold a little bit of commentary back on this, but for the Cytherians, I think that's a great pick. It is, they never came back, but if you haven't read it, I will point you to John Jackson Miller's book Takedown. I believe they make a comeback in that one, and it's a really entertaining book, partly because John Jackson Miller is just a really great author and writes entertaining stories and stuff. So you should check that one out.
Is that a TNG standalone novel?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. TNG standalone novel.
I'm pretty sure I haven't read that one, so that's cool.
It was only a few years ago.
Oh, it's a new one. Okay.
Yeah. It was in the post-Nemesis continuity, but it's standalone. It's not in a series, like in a mini series within itself. But yeah, no, that giant floating head is so, and the language that he uses is so entertaining and very, very memorable. So yes, I like that.
I love it. Okay, well.
Begin round one.
Round one. Let's not hold back anything. It's your pick, Kimberly. So what do you got? We're firing the torpedoes?
We're firing the torpedoes. I picked the nth degree.
Fantastic. I mean, it's not really, I'm not really going to fire the torpedoes because it's not a duplicate, but that's a fantastic pick.
My 5 words are most advanced human being ever. And the hashtag is, I feel smaller. In case you haven't checked your notes, you had this at like 93. Something like that.
Yeah, I think like in the late 90s. Yeah, so it's the second half. Yep.
It's the second half. So that kind of qualified it to be a little bit underappreciated. And it's kind
So
of
that means I do have Ship in a Bottle higher than probably. So
I think so.
But I don't think of Ship in the Bottle as a Barkley episode. So
right.
there,
It's
that's
not
my
primarily.
that's my justification. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, it's kind of like stuck in the back half of season 4 too, where there's some decent but not necessarily the greatest episodes ever and stuff. And so it's there, but not everybody remembers it. But Dwight Schultz is so good in it. And I really like the way that his character throws some light on the senior staff. I mean, we get a few other characters that kind of throw some elbows and expose a little bit of the challenges or a little bit of the not nice dynamic there, like Shelby or Roe. But Barkley does that too, right? So in the first time that Barkley appears, you have Geordi, or you have Picard and others saying like, you need to be nicer to this person. And in the nth degree, like everybody becomes uncomfortable with Barkley. It's like, what do we do? And it's like, well, you can't punish somebody for being very smart. So you see how everybody reacts to him. But I like the fact that they have a play going on in this, that we see the acting and how he becomes more confident. And so Dwight Schultz's transformation from being a really, really bad actor in the first scene to just being stunning and bringing everybody to tears, his growing confidence with Deanna, his growing confidence in the engineering room with Geordi and others, like proposing solutions. And then as he becomes more intelligent because of the Cytherian influence and the way that he sets up the thing in the holodeck is really cool. When the computer says like, I don't know how to design that. And he says, no problem, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't exist.
It's just such a great story. I can watch this anytime. It doesn't usually come up on lists of, the best Star Trek episodes ever. And it's not, but it is absolutely a fun, entertaining watch that involves pretty much all the characters and has a good sci-fi story and an interesting, cool alien at the end that we never really heard from again. But, we know that they spent time there and got to learn and do first contact. And so, so that's my pick.
Oh, but I have done better since. That was one of Barkley's lines from Cyrano de Bergerac. I love this pick. I think it's a perfect underrated episode. It's really rewatchable. The production design on Barkley in the super chair with the lights on his head is really, really good. And I just said it during my pick about the Cytherians, that I love that they don't get trapped in the trope of this super computer being, all-powerful being, all of a sudden endangering and threatening the lesser people around him. So it feels like they're going that way, and everyone's really trepidatious around him, but they don't play that trope. He's not going to hurt anybody. He's just making decisions for them without consulting them, which of course Picard does not like. Yeah, it's a really, really smart, clever episode with a huge, brilliant sci-fi concept behind it, with this move into another galaxy and the Cytherians. So perfect pairing back to back. I love it. Christian, any final comments on the nth degree?
I just want to kind of piggyback on your reference to Flowers for Algernon. And, Dwight Schultz just does such a phenomenal job in this episode. His performance is heartbreaking at times because, he knows that he's going to go back to who he was before. And it is heartbreaking.
Yeah. And there's that great Deanna moment where she mentions that he made a really good pass at me. And then Riker's like, how did that play out? Classic. Okay. Good stuff. And Christian, your number one. What is your underrated episode?
So this is the one that I messaged you about having little problems with, but I actually changed it this morning of all time.
Okay. All right.
So 5 words in a hashtag: The Amazing Race, Star Trek, hashtag humans, Romulans, Klingons, and Cardassians. Oh my. And it's season 6, episode 20, The Chase.
I love it.
This episode, I mean, it gets talked about in memes a lot, but it doesn't get it talked about enough, I don't think, as in how great of an episode it is. All of our major characters from TNG have a role in it, kind of like Kimberly was saying about the Nth Degree. So everyone has a role in this one. It's got an exciting mystery. We have Picard's passion and love for archaeology and the history. We have starships galore. There's all sorts of starships. There's alien species encounters all over the place. And then that last scene with the Romulan commander expressing hope to one day become friends with the Federation. It's really a very hopeful ending. And then now seeing how things are in Discovery in the far, far future, it really is a nice bookend to that storyline.
Yeah, I think it's this is a fantastic episode, and it is. So when I think about it being underrated, I think of it in a context which I've talked about before, which is that I always think of, and this might be a topic we do someday on TrekRanks, so I probably won't be able to pick the chase, even though it would be my number one episode. It's what's a one-part episode that you wish was a two-parter? Because I think if they had made this, I do feel like if the chase had been stretched out into a two-parter, I really like your point about how every character's got a big part in this, which is pretty rare in the way TNG was structured. Is if they made this a two-parter, I honestly think it would be remembered right alongside the best two-parters in the history of Trek, and no one would ever consider it to be underrated because it's such a huge idea. There's so much going on. I just feel like, man, if they fleshed this out, it would have been, or it would have made a great movie, that kind of thing too. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely underrated in that regard because it really doesn't get mentioned in, on top lists at all. I'm not sure what it is on TrekRanks, but Kimberly, what's your take on the chase?
Great pick. I also like to note this episode for the personal connection that Picard has to the entire mystery, like having his mentor come and then sharing those little aspects of himself. It's a nice Picard Crusher episode because they've got the breakfast and they work together on the mystery and have the talk at the end as well, where it's just clear they have a comfortable personal and professional relationship, which is kind of neat to see. But it is so neat to have all the aliens coming in and
yes,
collaborate. I like the Cardassian. I don't remember what her name is, but I like her a lot.
Yeah, she was awesome. It was great seeing everybody. I mean, just like that's again why, man, if this was two parts and you got more of all those different aliens, how incredible that would be. And I will say the mentorship part's awesome. That the actor's name is Norman Lloyd. I think he passed last year. Just an absolute legend that was an actor in Hollywood for like 70 years. He lived to be like 105, 106. And he was a renowned acting teacher. So he was, in his 80s when he played that part, which is amazing.
I made a discovery so profound in its implications that silence seemed the wisest course. This work has occupied my every waking thought. It's intruded upon my dreams. It's become my life. When finished, and I announce my findings, it'll be heard halfway across the galaxy.
Tell me.
I cannot, Mr. Picard. That information comes with a price. Your agreement to join me on the final leg of this expedition.
For how long?
3 months, perhaps a year.
Incredible. I love this pick. The chase is perfect for underrated. Okay, let's go to my round one pick. I love this pick. I think this episode, it's been on TrekRanks a few times, but I don't think I've ever highlighted it for this aspect of it, which I'm going to do right now. So 5 words and a hashtag, Data's Culture of One, hashtag, You Are the Bird. And my pick is Birthright Part 1. And it's really all about Data's dream imagery and dream sequence programming. So I actually rate this one pretty high on my TrekRanks. It's like number 37, season 6, episode 16. I've always been completely blown away by the data portion of Birthright, which it's kind of pairs kind of weirdly with the Worf portion. They both have like threads about discovering their unknown fathers, but you have this Klingon stuff on one side, and you've got this kind of ethereal, trippy, kind of out there dream sequences for Data, and that part just always really, really stood out to me. So that's why I'm picking this. It's about the data elements. I love the visuals here, where he first gets zapped into this dream, and he's in the corridor, and there's these cool angles, and he sees the young Soong, and he can't figure out. He gets zapped out of it, and he can't figure out what this thing was. He has memories of it, and he just can't process it. And Picard tells him to go, well, just kind of explore it and think about it, in your downtime. And so he does all. I love all these paintings. He does like the blacksmith, and then the corridor, and the anvil, and the hammer, and Soong's face, and the smoke, and the bird's wing, and he just all this abstract stuff. Just really cool to me. And then when they recreate the dream sequence, I think that 10-minute scene in TNG is just one of the best. It's just really well filmed. It's really poignant scene between the young Soong and Data, talking about his progression and his growth, and this dream program that he's buried inside, that he's activated now at a point in his development. And the final shots of this, where they just kind of Soong tells him, "You are the bird," which was my hashtag. And it's just this floating shot down the corridors, the beautiful beige corridors of the Enterprise D, where Data comes across Soong and the smoke and the bird's wing being worked on. And then he kind of goes through the ceiling out into space, and he twirls around to see the top of the Enterprise D hole, and then a nebula. I just love it. And it's beautiful. I love it. Birthright Part 1. It's one of my favorite rewatches, just for all of those Data moments. And Kimberly, what is your take on Birthright Part 1?
You make me want to go back and rewatch the whole dream sequence, because I certainly remember it. I definitely remember the anvil and the birds and everything else. And I would like to go back to appreciate it more. I think the main reason I always liked this episode was the crossover, because it seemed like we should be able to have more instances of people showing up from around the rest of Starfleet. And so having the Enterprise go to Deep Space Nine, and having Bashir, who was one of my favorite characters early on from Deep Space Nine, come on the Enterprise and play this role and be so excited about meeting Data and working with him on this was really cool.
Yeah, the crossover element, I didn't mention that too. That whole setup is fantastic.
Yeah.
We see Deep Space Nine in HD, so we have that element, both the promenade and the station from the outside. Christian, how about you on Birthright Part 1?
The funny thing is, this was on my secondary systems for episodes for the Data sequence. I mean,
awesome.
The Worf sequence, I really got tired of, but the Data sequence is so short, and this is harder. And you're right. I mean, it's so out there. It's so kind of 1960s trippy in a sense, but such a good sequence. And
it has stood the test of time the way that maybe the rest of the episode. I used to love this episode for both elements, and now I'm not going to lie, the Worf part's a little more standard. But yeah, and it was always weird to me that when this episode first aired and they went to Part 2, and I was like, oh, Part 2, okay, we're going to get more of this cool Data stuff. It's like, no, Part 2 is only Worf. It was kind of a weird, the tonal combination of those two stories was very, very strange. There's never anything like that in Star Trek, where you have like an A and a B for Part 1, and then Part 2 is just the A stuff, and the B story's over. It was
never mind. Right.
Yeah. It was, I mean, literally, I remember watching it the first time thinking, hey, where's the Data stuff? There's got to be more to that. He just kind of flew away. There's got to be more. Anyway, I love it. A ton of great picks here. Let's hear some secondary systems choices.
Let's see what you can do with the secondary systems.
Kimberly, what do you got?
Let's see. So I had a secondary system for behind the scenes, would have been the second season costume designer, Dorinda Wood, who was there, I think, before Black Blackman. And she was the one that was responsible for Guinan's costume, which is pretty iconic, and the initial costume design for the Borg.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's the piece I knew I was missing. William Worthies was only there for season 1.
Right.
And then it was Dorinda Wood, and then season 2, then season 3 is when Bob Blackman came forever. Yep.
Right. And we all know him, but I didn't know much about Dorinda Wood, but I heard an interview with her.
That's so cool.
It was cool. Another general pick, my underappreciated, was season 7. I feel like that a lot of people have the opinion that, by season 7, they were ready to go off the air. They were done with the stories. And yes, there's a couple of episodes that fit that bill, but it has some of my absolute favorite episodes in it, from Journey's End, The Pegasus, Parallels, Lower Decks,
all good things. I love Gambit.
Preemptive Strike is a cool Cardassian story, and then Attached, which is one of my all-time favorite episodes, of course.
I'm just gonna add on season 7, because you're so right that it gets kind of maligned and people are like, but a couple of things. It's the only season of Next Generation to be nominated for an Emmy, so it's Best Emmy Drama Series. So it was one of the 5 nominees. It lost to like Picket Fences or something, which is amazing. And it was a little bit of obviously a nod to how great their run, how their run was, and knowing it was ending. And it's funny you say that, because in my Trek ranks, there's more season 7 episodes in my top 20 than any other season, which says it all. So it's really top heavy. There's a few stinkers, but all good. I love it.
Yeah,
all right, keep going.
And the characters are more mature too. Like, so you're seeing them, like, it's fun to watch the early episodes, but it's neat to see them in their more mature, like, development stage.
Which a lot of people, because it's also like the family episodes, right? So you have like Picard's son, you have Dark Page, you have Homeward, you have all these like you have Data's mom episode. So there's a whole bunch of like the maturity of the characters.
Then I had just a couple more picks. My secondary systems for characters was Geordi LaForge. I think he doesn't get enough credit sometimes, but he is really competent, friendly. You see him grow over time as a leader, and he's a great engineer. So he should get more credit and not be dumped on so much for his difficulties in relationships.
He does have some of those.
Yeah. And then my other episode picks for underappreciated ones were Allegiance and The Quality of Life.
Oh, I love it. Exocomps. Fantastic. I love it. Peanut Hamper. Christian, what just missed your list?
So for production, I was really torn between my costume choice or this one. So you know how I love the music, and Jay Chataway, which Jay Chataway's music, it kind of sounds the same sometimes, but he's the one who composed the score for Dark Page. And the music for Dark Page, I'll probably get teared up talking about it, but as we go into that kind of final sequence with meeting Kestra and learning about the truth, the music is just beautiful. And it's available on one of the soundtracks they put out. And it gets quite a bit of listening when I'm doing my IEPs for work.
I love that pick. I need to go. I know it, but I don't know it. So that's something I'm going to go seek out. I love that.
Great pick.
I love Jay Chataway.
Yeah. Me too.
As far as characters, so the one character, I have 2 I picked here, but the one character that I would want to see more of in Star Trek was Shelby. I feel like she was a strong character, and we got so much buildup on who she was, and then we never see her again. It's one of the reasons why I love the New Frontier novel series, because she's first officer, then a captain, and then an admiral. I haven't finished them, so I don't know where she goes from there, but I love that she gets a future in the Trek novel verse, at least.
Well, and we did get a glimpse of her in Lower Decks, an embarrassment of Dupler. She's at the Admiral party or like the big executive party.
Whoa, Captain Shelby enter number 1.
Hilarious. Lower Decks kills me. But yes, your point notwithstanding, more Shelby, please. She's the best.
And the other character I wanted to see a little more of was, which I know is really not possible, but Jack Crusher. I mean, the few times we heard stories about him, and then that one video that Wesley gets, as someone who lost their dad really young, the character of Wesley kind of with that loss in his life for his father really always got to me. And
I love that. I never really thought about that. It would be pretty cool to see an old like a flashback or a time travel story with Jack Crusher. It's a great shout.
Yeah, because he was never there except in those 3 little glimpses, but he impacted 3 of the main characters in really deep ways. He's Beverly's husband. He was Picard's best friend. He was the reason that Picard felt so much guilt about his relationship with Beverly, and he was Wesley's father. So
it's crazy. It's such a great way to frame it, and the fact that we don't know anything about where they were in their time and anything about that time. So that's ripe for storytelling. I love that. Great pick.
As far as episodes, well, my number 1 comfort food Star Trek episode was Cost of Living, and I put that on there because I love this episode. It's Fluxana mud bath episode. It's why I love mud baths. And
it's the higher,
the fewer.
But being young, seeing this episode, I could really relate to Alexander and like how he felt that the adults were kind of all working against him, and he felt like he was kind of on his own. And then he formed this beautiful friendship with Loxana. And now as I grow older, mid-40s here, I'm learning to really love her insight in this episode. And just that whole sequence where she talks about being alone, it's heartbreaking.
Sorry. Had to do it. All right. That's fantastic, Christian. Any others?
The other one I had on there was The Wounded. I don't feel like we talk about The Wounded enough. The Wounded is
that's right.
It is so good.
I mean, it's basically the reason why we get Deep Space Nine, probably because that's the first time we see Cardassians.
Yeah. I want to say The Wounded is top 20. Oh, it's top 20 at TrekRanks.
Good.
So definitely not underrated on my list. It's number 16.
Good.
I love it. Okay, so I don't have too many. A lot of stuff has been mentioned that I was thinking of. I'm going to say my toughest cut is just an episode that I go back to it a lot. I really like this episode. I know it's not perfect in the ending when Riker kills Yuta. That it's pretty problematic. Like, just run over there and grab her, man. don't phase her. But I like this episode. I just think it's an interesting, it's a clever sci-fi story where she's carrying on this vendetta across 100 years. It's super layered. There's a lot going on. It's a real good, strong portrayal of pirates in Star Trek. I think it's one of the best. And just the conversations happening between the sovereign and these kind of established people trying to bring them back into their society and them asking for land and autonomy. There's a lot there. It's a really good episode. I like it. So I almost picked that. And then I'm just going to shout out my 5 underrated picks or my 5 guilty pleasure picks that probably would have been pretty close to my underrated list if I hadn't ruled them out. So the Royale Haven from season 1, I think, is just a totally underrated episode. The stuff with these 2 families is really good. Genesis, Dark Page, and my absolute favorite, totally underrated, everybody hates it except me, Force of Nature from the 7th season. I love that episode because half of it is just Data and Geordi talking about cats and crawling around in Jeffrey's tubes. So there you go. Okay. Awesome topic. Let's get into our regeneration cycle and go through a recap of our picks.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Kimberly, recap your picks really quick.
My number 5 pick was the tricorder. My number 4 pick was the writer Renee Echeverria. My number 3 pick was the Troys, Loxana and Deanna. My number 2 pick for underrated character was Beverly Crusher. And my number 1 underrated episode was the Nth Degree.
Fantastic. I love that list. Christian, how about you? Recap yours real quick.
So for production design, I had the season 1, season 2 uniforms. For creative and actor, I had Majel Barrett Roddenberry. My Dabo round was the beige Enterprise D interior. My character was Sayla. And my episode was The Chase.
The Chase. Okay, and my recap, my round 5 production was the serialized storytelling in TNG, not getting enough credit. My number 4 pick for performer creative was David Spielberg, who played Hutch in Starship Mine. Number 3 was just Soliton Waves, the goofiest pick ever from Newground, my Dabo round. My character, also pretty goofy, was the Cytherian explorer from the Nth Degree. And my number 1 underrated episode is Birthright Part 1 because of all that data dream imagery, which I just think is fantastic. All right, so we don't have too many stats here. I'm just going to rattle off. We had basically only like 5 characters picked, and they were Hutch, Deanna Troi, Beverly, Sela, and Loxana Troi with 2 got picked twice. So that's about it for stats. For the season breakdown, we had nothing from season 1, which is sad. 1 from season 7, 2 from season 3, 3 from season 4, and then season 5 and 6, which that actually makes sense. Each had 4 picks. So, you know me, just love to break it down. So, all right. But as we do every week, we have once again been hit by temporal distortion. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The temporal distortions are fracturing space-time throughout the ship.
Cause? Unknown.
Oh, we know the cause, Mr. Tuvok's, all this amazing feedback we continue to receive from our listeners here at TrekRanks. And this week's temporal distortion has sent us back to episode 126. We're catching up on some incredible submissions we got for our top 5 characters that fooled you, which was a super popular topic, a lot of feedback. So I am going to rattle off just a few deep cut picks that I love that we got. One of them from Beverly Falls at Dr. BNC89. She picked Steph from Voyager's Vis-a-Vis. And she wrote, Paris is not the only one who's been switched. I love that pick because that was a really good character that fooled you. This one's great from our friend Jen Tift. Edith Quarks. She had Norvo Tegan is a murderer from Prodigal Daughter in Deep Space Nine. He definitely fooled us. And I've got, okay, here's another 2. These are 2 from our friend Caleb at Rogue Moog. 2 great deep cut picks. 5 words in a hashtag. Artificial intelligence with good intentions. Hashtag not your typical life form. And it's Zora from Discovery, but to connect, which I love that Zora storyline in season 4 of Discovery. And his number, he had another one that was bridge officers always coming back, hashtag from the dead. You know what this is? It's Lieutenant Shax, and we'll always have Tom Paris from Lower Decks. 2 awesome picks. And I'm just going to rattle off a couple more here from Rich Masters at Masters Rich with his. It's another one of his amazing alliterative lists. He had Changeling, Cheats, Constables, Cathartic Confession, which is just so good. That's, of course, the Changing, between a rock and a hard place. That's the Changeling in Heart of Stone, tricking tricking Odo. He had Acerbic Ambassador absconds alongside adversaries, which is just so good. It's bitter to pell to swallow from TNG's Data's Day. Ambassador T'Pel sneaking off as a undercover Romulan, and shape-shifting spy supplants subjugated surgeon, which is so good. Julian from In Purgatory's Shadow, hashtag Killer Jules. That guy's amazing with his alliterative 5 words and a hashtag. Okay, those picks are more than enough to clear ourselves from this week's temporal distortion. So as always, a big thanks to everyone for all your great responses to the TrekRanks podcast. Please keep them coming to me at TrekRanks on Twitter so we can retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 TNG underrated, or a list from any of our past shows. Give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. Hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we are doing a really unique one. So we're recording this episode before they've announced when Star Trek Lower Decks is coming back. But you know me, I like to kind of have everything planned out and have some topics line up when series are coming back as previews. So I'm timing this one in the calendar right around a time where I think it could be a fun preview for season 3 of Star Trek Lower Decks. I'm hoping it'll line up. So by the time you hear this, you might have an idea of whether we got it right or not. So the topic, hopefully, which will be a preview for Star Trek Lower Decks season 3, and if it's not, it's a great topic anyways, is our top 5 unjustly accused storylines. So the last time we saw Captain Carol Freeman, she had epically been unjustly accused in the episode First Contact. So got me thinking there are so many great storylines in Trek when someone is unjustly accused. So Kimberly and Christian, and we talked about some of them on this show. Any thoughts on a quick unjustly accused storyline? This is a tough one. Kimberly, what do you got?
I guess the first thing that would come to mind on that is the end of Gambit, right? Where Riker is being hauled off to the brig by Data because he's being told.
I like that. Okay.
You're joking, right? You're just joking. It wasn't for real that I was holding up the ship and stealing from you. And Data keeps a straight face the entire way down the corridor.
Well, why not? I love that. I just love Riker being like, he was joking, right? And Data's like, come with me. Yes, unjustly. Hey, unjustly accused can be whatever you want it to be, and that is a perfect example. Christian, you got anything?
I mean, the first one that popped in my head was one that we talked about earlier today, but I'm going to go beyond that and say Kirk and McCoy unjustly accused for the murder of Chancellor Gorkon.
There you go.
Ooh,
there you
great
go.
pick. That's so good.
There's a bunch of them like that once you really start thinking about it. It's a tough one off the top of your head, but when you get into it, was the one you were thinking of was Worf and Redemption?
Worf's father.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Worf's father being unjustly accused. Yeah, all those things. Yeah, that's going to be tough for me not to pick because Redemption's my favorite episode, but I'm probably not going to pick it because I talk about it so often. Anyway, I am looking forward to that topic. That's going to be a fun one. All right, so to wrap it up, a huge thanks to Kimberly, Lawler, and Christian, Juel. It was great having you guys on for this fantastic topic.
I was wondering if you could show me how to access these subspace communications logs.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. It was great to talk to y'all.
Fantastic. I really appreciate that, Kimberly. And Christian, I hope you had fun, man.
I had a great time. I'm so glad that we were finally able to get this to happen.
Yes, so great. Hopefully, it'll be the first of many. So we'll now that we've got our schedules aligned, we'll make sure to keep reaching out. All right, thanks everyone again for engaging with us here on episode 140 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
It's not over between us, Luoxana. You're mine, and I will not let you go. I insist you return to my side immediately.
You mean you still care?
My love is a fever, longing still for that which longer nurseth the disease.
Tell me more.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Let me not
You didn't tell me that you and Captain Picard were...
You said you didn't want to hear about my other romances. I have a new love, Jean-Luc. And you can't keep killing all my lovers. Now that simply has to stop.
Killing?
Oh, he's insanely jealous.
Listen, Tog. I must possess Loaxana, and if that means destroying your ship in the process, so be it.
Captain, I had no idea Loaxana...
Don't let him threaten you. You can defeat him. The only way you'll ever get me back is over Tog's dead body.
That can be arranged. Mr. Worf, arm phaser banks and photon torpedoes. If Loaxana Troy is not in my arms in 10 seconds, throw everything you've got at the crater.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire TrekRanks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
Just dream, Data. Dream. Data. You are the bird.